Hey folks, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well. Out and about on something special today. In fact, it's a special edition motorcycle. This is the Triumph Daytona Moto2 765 Limited Edition. I think it's called something like that, I might have the words in slightly the wrong order. This is the bike that Triumph built to commemorate the deal they got with Moto2, the MotoGP series. They became the provider of the engines, and the engine on this bike is loosely based on those Moto2 GP engines, but of course it's made a little bit more friendly for the road. So it's a special edition. I'm going to ride it for a bit and I'll tell you if indeed I think it's special. Stick around, stay tuned. So this isn't in fact the first time I've ever ridden this bike. The first time I rode this bike was a couple of months back when I was extremely lucky to ride this up the hill at Goodwood as part of the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I made a video of that. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go back and watch that video at the end of this one, because I think it's one of my best videos. I actually rode up the hill with the astronaut Tim Peake. Had a great day. Anyway, go and check out that video. I'll put a link in the corner if you've not seen it. Anyway, at the end of riding up the hill, which was all too very brief, I said to Triumph, I love that bike, you're going to have to loan that to me so I can ride it a bit more. And huge thanks to Triumph, because they've been very good to me. And they contacted me after that and said, yeah, we'll lend you the bike if you want. So here I am, I've got this Daytona for the next couple of weeks for me to get to know. So really thrilled about that, so thank you to Triumph for that. So this bike came out about, I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago now, I suppose. As I say, it's a limited edition bike. They made 765 of these to sell in the US and Canada, and another 765 for the rest of the world, including Europe. Hence the limited edition. And you may be able to see on the yoke here, this one, if I lift the key fob, is number 74 of 765. So this is a relatively early one. I did do some research on the bike obviously before I came out, just to get the details of the spec and so on, which I'll talk you through when I do the walk around. And according to the Triumph website, these have all sold out. So if you want a new one of these, I'm afraid you're out of luck. However, I did a quick search on Google, as you do. There are a few for sale second hand with low mileage, so you can still get hold of them if you're interested in what really is the ultimate Daytona, I suppose. The Daytona was a bike that was discontinued, I don't know, about 4 years ago now, I suppose, which was just a cracking handling mid-weight sports bike that just everybody always praised as being an excellent machine, and then Triumph discontinued it. I guess they just weren't selling very well, and ever since then everybody's been saying, bring back the Daytona please, Triumph. And they've been saying, well, it we can, but there's no demand. Our research shows there's no demand for mid-sized sports bikes, so they haven't built one in mass production. But they did come out with this, as I say, limited run to commemorate that Moto2 deal. And it's a thing of beauty. It's definitely the best Daytona so far. Lots of carbon on it, all the electronic rider aids that the older Daytona never had, of course, and now it has that 765cc triple engine. The old Daytona, of course, having the 675, which it shared with the Street Triple. So the engine on here is a heavily modified version of that in the current Street Triple. It's got different cams on it, different intakes, different conrods, basically a different tune to give it a bit more poke. This one I think puts out something like 128 brake horsepower, whereas the Street Triple puts out 121, and there's a slightly different tune to them as well. This, though, of course, not being the Moto2 bike, has been tuned to make it ready to ride on the road. And that's what struck me when I rode it up the hill at Goodwood, just how easy this is to ride. That triple engine is so beautiful and smooth. It really does flatter your riding. It's a lovely thing. It's got an excellent quick shifter on here as well, both up and down. It's a very easy bike to ride. Now inevitably I'm going to compare it with my Panigale, because that's a bike I know well, and on paper it's a similar sort of spec sports bike, it being, you know, not a litre bike and costing around 15 grand. So I think the comparison is probably valid, even though this is a triple versus a twin, of course. What I would say immediately is this is much more comfortable than my Panigale. The sitting position on this, of course it's sports bike, I'm leant forward as you can see, clip-on handlebars, but it's not particularly uncomfortable. It's not an extreme sports bike position. You could ride this for a couple of hours. You might want to get off in between times, but you're not going to be absolutely crippled, unless maybe you're a taller person, and then you may struggle a little bit. Gosh, this gearbox is beautiful on here. The brakes and suspension have also been upgraded on here. It's got Olin suspension, fully adjustable, Brembo Stylema brakes, so those are excellent. So top quality cycle parts, lots of electronics as well, 8-level traction control, ABS of course. I think it's got 5 rider modes. So everything you need there. If you're a track day enthusiast and you want a bike that you can ride on the road as well as the track, then this is definitely worth considering. Typical lot, I've come out at it's about 4:30, 4:45, just getting on to knocking off time from work, so quite a bit of traffic around. But this bike is perfectly happy in traffic. Just looking around the cockpit here, very nice machined top yoke, as I say, with that limited edition number on there, like that. TFT screen on here, not sure what that's taken off of, maybe off the Street Triple. It's not looking quite as good as some of the more modern day, I say modern day, in the last 6 months Triumphs. Triumph have now seemed to have got TFT sorted. This one, it feels a bit like it's bolted on, a bit like this is a bit of a parts bin special. I don't want to give you the impression that this bike isn't special, isn't well made. It's beautifully made and beautifully finished, as Triumphs are, but there's a bit of a feeling about it that makes me think that, because things like that TFT is angled at slightly the wrong position. It's like they take it off of another bike and sort of shoehorned it in here. There's bits of cable around here that are coiled up, look, because there's too much cable. What's that all about? That's just not the sort of stuff you'd expect on a premium bike. And if I'm doing that comparison with my Panigale versus this, I would say the Panigale just feels that much more special, even though that's not a special edition. All that said, the sound of this triple and the way this bike accelerates is just cracking. It is a lovely thing to ride. If you're just in it for the riding experience, you're going to love the Daytona. Right, sir. Let's talk a bit about practical issues, because one thing I have noticed on this bike is that the mirrors, although they look okay, they're not too stalky, mounted out on the fairings, you get a good view behind, they do vibrate a lot. I don't know if you can see in that one, the camera may not be positioned right, but it's just blurry all the time. I mean, you can make out what's behind you. It's probably not an issue, but every time you look at it, you think your eyes are going a bit funny. Handling on here is sublime. It's one of those bikes, so you just think where you want to go, and around she goes. Right, while I'm enjoying these back roads, let's use the magic of editing, whip off somewhere else, and I'll show you around the bike, talk you through the spec in the usual way. Okay, so welcome to Great Missenden Lawn Tennis Club. Let me just show you what that looks like. Here we go. It's very posh here, apparently. Very quiet at the moment. Not many people playing tennis. Maybe you know something about that weather that I don't. Anyway, back to the bike. So here we are, the Triumph Daytona 765 Moto2 Special Edition. A beautiful looking bike, actually. I mean, even though one of my criticisms of the bike when I first saw it in pictures was that they kind of missed the opportunity to sort of update the Daytona look, because this looks exactly like the old Daytonas looked that were discontinued 4 years ago or whenever it was. But they have done a great job on making this a good looking version of that Daytona. I mean, look at this carbon on here. This whole fairing is carbon fibre, and it looks really nicely done. Looks kind of expensive. I love the Triumph badging on here as well. Looks really nice. The gold Öhlins forks look really nice as well on there, and the upswept Arrow exhaust on there. That's a titanium end can. It sounds lovely. It's not obnoxiously loud, but it has got a nice note to it. So yeah, beautiful bike. However, there are some things I'm not so keen on. I've mentioned before that bit of coiled up wire down here. It's just like it's too long for the bike or something. Isn't quite right. The way that the TFT is tucked at slightly the wrong angle. If you turn it on, it's one of the we can bring it to life. It's one of the older style TFTs. Got a nice Moto2 graphic as it starts up, but it's not the best of the Triumph TFTs, it has to be said. Another thing I'm not so keen on with the bike is when you switch her on, it's got two headlights at the front, of course, but it's one of those bikes where you only get the one as the sort of running light, and I know there's reasons for that, but I just don't like that. Anyway, I said I'd talk you through the spec. I guess I should just turn her off so I don't run the battery out. So first off then, the engine on here, highly modified version of the engine that's in the current Street Triple. This one has got different cams, different intakes, different conrods, crank and barrels, and it puts out 128 brake horsepower, whereas the one on the Street Triple RS puts out 121 brake horsepower at a slightly lower rev limit as well, so this rev's slightly higher. 58.6 foot-pounds of torque, which I think is 1 foot-pound less than the Street Triple. Let's look at the brakes on here. These are the fancy Brembo Stylema calipers on here, 4-pot calipers. They work extremely well. They're on two 310mm discs, and while I'm up the front here, we've got 43mm Öhlins forks here. These are the Nix 30s. On the back end, we've got a single disc and one pot, or a single pot caliper, as well as you can see a Brembo one there. And if we look at the suspension around the back here, you can see it's got the fancy adjustable Öhlins on the back as well. It's the TTX 36 shock and fully adjustable, as you can see. Seat height on here, very accessible actually, 822mm. Sounds relatively high, but because it's so narrow waisted, you can get your feet down it easy. I'm only 5'8", have no problem getting my feet on the deck. Talking about having problems with the bike, I mean, it's very easy to ride, there are no problems, but one thing I would say is it feels surprisingly top heavy, which surprised me because the Street Triple doesn't feel like that. This is actually 165 kilograms dry weight, which is very light, but for some reason it takes a bit of a lift to get it off the side stand. Don't know why that is. The tank on here, 17.4 litres that whole Triumph, so it has a theoretical 189 miles per gallon. Electronics wise, 5 riding modes, ABS, 8-level traction control, up and down quick shifter, colour TFT as I mentioned, and the price when these were new were $15,765, and 765 only were being built in the US and Canada, and another 765 for the rest of the world. But as I say, according to the website, they are all sold now, so you'd have to buy a second-hand one if you fancy one of these. But there are a few if you look on the web, but they hold their prices well, it being a limited edition, of course. Interestingly, this is the first ever bike that's been built in partnership with Dorna, the MotoGP owners. I guess that just allows Triumph to use the words like MotoGP on it, Moto2 here on the yoke, for example. And also, this bike, interestingly, maybe to you, is actually built in Hinckley. So there we go. This one's not built in Thailand. There aren't that many of these anymore. Anyway, there we go. What else can I say about it? I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, a lovely looking bike and lovely to ride. Just a couple of little foibles. It feels a bit like it might have been rushed out the door, but there we go. That's the Daytona 765 Moto2 limited edition. Okay, so welcome back on board. Still absolutely loving riding this Daytona. Again, while I'm thinking about how does this compare with my Panigale, the Panigale I mentioned maybe feels a bit more special than this special edition, but it's not as comfortable and it's definitely not as easy to ride. We're talking about my 899. The current V2 is certainly, I think, probably as easy to ride, and of course the two sound completely different, this being having the intake whine of the triple, my Panigale being a twin, and indeed the V2 being a twin. Other than that, there aren't really any other bikes. I suppose the Aprilia 660 you could say fits in this category. It's maybe not quite such a angry, sporty monster of a bike, but it's certainly one that maybe you'd be considering if you're in the market for a mid-sized sports bike. There's the traffic looking down there. Alright, let's head down that way for a change. Switch gear on here, bog standard Triumph, straight off, the same as the current Street Triple. Nothing very complicated about it, I'm glad to say. All works well. It's got one of the little joysticks to get through the various functions, which I always complain about on Triumphs. Never tire of the sound of these triples. It just sounds beautiful. Just thinking about the comfort on here now I've ridden it for a little while. The seat is quite hard on here. You can move around quite a bit. It's pretty spacious. I can move right back to tuck down. I've got loads of room on the seat. I'm 5'8". I think if you were a taller person you might find the leg position a little bit too tucked up, but somebody medium-sized like me, small to medium-sized, then it's a pretty comfy sports bike to be on. Ha! White vans are out in abundance today, good to see. I'm recording this to the back end of August. I have to say we've had an absolutely rubbish summer this year. This is actually, would you believe, one of the better days. And it's basically cloudy. It's quite warm but horrible. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, I definitely chose the wrong time of day to come out and do this. Look at this traffic, nightmare. Alright, so how will I sum up then after this first ride out on the Triumph Daytona 765 Moto2 limited edition? Well, what I would say is it's a pure rider's bike. It's a joy to ride, it's beautiful to ride. There are a few things about it that aren't quite as you'd expect for a bike costing 15 grand. Now you can't buy them new anymore, it's probably not an issue because you'll get one second hand and you'll get better value. But the second hand ones I was looking at were not far off 15, to be honest. I guess because it's that limited edition they do hold their value. Carbon fibre work is beautiful. I like the top yoke, that's nice. And generally the quality of the bike is good. Just those few little niggles I pointed out that let it down, like the coiled leads under the handlebar. The fact that the TFT feels like a bit of a bolt on. But they're relatively minor things. If you're just into this because you want a pure riding bike, then this is for you. It's a lovely machine. So I'm absolutely chuffed that Triumph have lent this to me again. It's lovely to get reacquainted with it. I'm looking forward to riding it again a few more times over the next couple of weeks. Hope you've enjoyed that review. Love to hear back from you. Stick any comments below as to whether you think I'm being unfair or harsh on the bike. If you've got one, what's your thoughts on the bike so far? And do you think Triumph should bring back a mass-produced Daytona once again? Maybe a Daytona 1000, how about that? That would be nice, wouldn't it? I think it's a shame having Triumph in all those different sectors but not in sports bikes other than these sort of limited run bikes, but there we go. Right, that's it for this time. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Mr. Fly. Cheerio.